Hello dear learner, I welcome you to the second lecture of week 1 and the title of today's lecture is Sources and Features of Critical Theory. As we have already mentioned in our first lecture, the meaning and the nature of critical theory and also the wider meaning of critical theory, which is the critical traditions. We have also mentioned in our lecture 1 that what are the different traditions which are in existence in the critical theory, which is used in the broader sense. And today we will see that the critical theory, when it is used in the narrow sense and it is associated with the Frankfurt School of Political Thought, it is not the only theory, because we know that before the advent of critical theory there have been many such other theories, or there have been so many other philosophers who have actually undertaken the job of critical theorist, but they were not known by the name of critical theorist, which we in the present time associated it only with the Frankfurt School in the narrow sense of the term. So therefore, in this lecture we will discuss about various sources of critical theory which were in existence before the rise of the Frankfurt School, and also we will try to cover some of the important features of critical theory. So with this note, I would like to first concentrate on the important topics which will be covered in this lecture. As I have just said, that we will discuss in brief some of the important sources of critical theory, and then after that we will discuss some important features of critical traditions. Now the keywords which are used in this lecture are structure, agency, alienation, reification and liberal. Now let us start with the sources of critical theory. Now we know that a critical theory, in the sense of challenging the injustices and oppressions in the society, have been in existence even before the establishment of Frankfurt School in Germany. And if we go back to the ancient times, we know that one of the very important Greek philosopher whose name can be considered as the foremost critical theorist, and he was Socrates. Socrates is generally said to be the precursor of critical theory, or he laid the foundation for the critical tradition. We all know that he was condemned to death for raising questions or for raising voice against the establishment or against the conventional wisdom. He was alleged to be corrupting the morale of the youngsters. So therefore he was condemned to death. And the second important, which is very I can say that it is one of the major tradition, and it is the Enlightenment tradition. Enlightenment tradition is also a type of it is also a particular type of critical theory which is having an inherent critical character. You know that in the medieval era, individuals did not have any rights, and there were so much of prejudices, there was so much of oppressive social structures. The economic and political structure what was not at all congenial for the development of human liberty and human freedom. And therefore we know that the medieval age is also known as the Dark Age. But Enlightenment tradition, they have criticized all these prejudices. They have actually talked about the equality of human beings. They have actually justified why human beings should be considered equal, and on that ground the notion of human rights have come into existence. If we see the definition of human rights are those rights which are granted to human beings because they are born as a human, and since every human beings, they possess reason and rationality, therefore they all are equal. Now such a rational justification for equality was provided by the Enlightenment tradition, and on that ground they could challenge all the prejudices, all the unequal practices, all the oppressive types of procedures and activities which were practiced at that point of time. and they asked for liberty and rights of the individual. In fact, they have given center place to the individual and his rights. Therefore, they are also one of the very important constituent of critical tradition, and I must say with no doubt that today the individuals are enjoying rights, and the type of freedom and the type of liberty which we are enjoying today, and the type of, you can say, the equal rights which are enjoying today, all the credit goes to the Enlightenment tradition. Now, another very important thinker who have been associated with the Enlightenment tradition and a very important political and moral philosopher, his name was Immanuel Kant. Now, Immanuel Kant talked about the moral autonomy of individuals. He was very specific and very emphatic about the liberty of the individual, because he believed that without liberty cannot develop themselves and they cannot enjoy their rights. And he gave a very important argument which actually formed the cornerstone of all the subsequent theories, including the critical traditions. Human beings are not to be used as means. Human beings actually should be treated as ends. And therefore, this important understanding about the nature of human beings have inspired and motivated all the critical theorists in the subsequent years to come. As we have already seen in our first lecture, where I have mentioned that critical theory in the narrow sense of the term was the product of certain social, economic and political conditions of that period. It basically arose between World War I and World War II, and there were various reasons, various social, economic and political conditions which led to the, or you can say which propelled the rise of the critical theory arose with the Frankfurt School. And the first important condition was the oppressive structures, the type of alienation in the Western liberal society. Now, in the Western liberal society or civilization, there were various oppressive practices and structures which led to the loss of rights and the loss of self, and ultimately to alienation of human beings. Now, besides this, there was rise of national socialism. There was rise of state capitalism, how the state was acting as an agent of the capitalist forces. How in the name of socialism, state was becoming authoritarian. They were not only worried about the practices in the Western society or the ideas of Western civilization, they were also worried about the various types of degenerative practices which have crept in the Soviet communism. So, therefore, they were actually questioning and introspecting both these major traditions of that time. And another very important the development which was taking place at that time was the rise of mass society, and with that the spread of mass culture, mass education. Because now with the advent of technology, now the services at one point of time or in a single time can be provided and can be to a large segment of population. So, therefore, now in the name of broadcasting, in the name of education, a large segment of a population can be educated or can be granted services or can be or they will be able to access the program simultaneously. So, therefore, there is spread of a mass culture which has spread some sort of conformity and uniformity, about which we will study in the subsequent lectures. So, they were the product of time. Every ideology is a product of its time. There are certain historical, economic, political and cultural conditions which leads to the rise of a certain ideology at a particular point of time. So, if we want to understand the nature and the basic features of critical theory, we have to understand the background in which a critical theory actually rose or evolved. As as we have already discussed in lecture 1, that the critical theory which was associated with the Frankfurt School was basically, it constituted of Marxist philosophers who were influenced by Karl Marx theory. Now, Karl Marx had very beautifully formulated the relationship between economic base and an ideological superstructure in the society. He said that the society consists of two parts, one is the base, and that base constitutes the economic system, and all of the structure rises on that base, and they are known as superstructure. Superstructure constitutes state, politics, culture, history, and all the aspects of society. And he said that base actually determines the superstructure. So, economic system actually have determined the movement of history or the type of social and political system which we are going to have at any particular point of time in history. So, therefore, the economic understanding of history has been the cornerstone of Karl Marx. And I would like to point here that we can understand Marx teaching into two phases. One is the old Marx and another is the young Marx. The old Marx, which is known as the classical Marxism, has basically understood the capitalist society from economic perspective. He has made an economic critique of the Western capitalist society by mentioning that how the capitalism has led to the division of classes in the society, and those classes are characterized by inequality, and he has named these classes as bourgeois and proletariat, and how bourgeois, because they possess capital, are able to exploit the proletariat, because the proletariat, they have no access to capital or property, and they have nothing with them except their actually labor, and with the help of that labor they are able to sell that labor and earn their livelihood. So, such a exploitative and an unequal system of production was based on another theory of surplus value, which was based on accumulation of more and more profits by the capitalist by reducing the cost of production and by giving minimum subsistence wages to the proletariat. So, we can say that Karl Marx had provided a very scientific analysis of the functioning of capitalist system, and he believes that he had provided a scientific understanding of socialism and how socialism can be established after overthrowing the capitalist form of production by means of revolution. So, the critical theorists have been inspired by this Marxist tradition also. Now, coming back to another phase of Karl Marx teaching, which was the younger Marx. The younger Marx was more bothered about the alienation of human beings in the capitalist society. He believed that the type of exploitative relation in a capitalist society has led to alienation of human beings, not only from his products and the modes of production, but also from himself. He has explained the problem of alienation from different perspectives, and I would like to say that the critical theorists, they have got inspiration not only from the older Marx but also from the young Marx, and they have, perhaps I would like to say that in comparison to the older Marx, the critical theorists, they have gained more inspiration from the younger Marx, because they have tried to explain the exploitative nature of capitalist society from cultural perspective, from ideological perspective, because as I have mentioned in my first lecture that one of the questions which actually concerned the critical theorist was that in spite of the prophecy of Karl Marx about the definiteness of revolution, why the revolution did not take place in the industrially advanced society as it was predicted by Karl Marx, why it took place in a society which was industrially backward. So, these were some of the questions which was actually, I would like to say, the major concerns of the critical theorist, and therefore they have also tried to find out the reasons why in the modern society, why after World War II, the reasons for the occurrence of revolution got finished, and what were those conditions in the capitalist society led to the rise of such circumstances which did not help the revolution to take place. So, therefore, both the aspects of Marxist teachings have inspired the critical theory, and they have tended to focus on how power and domination operate in particular in the realm of superstructure. Basically, they have tried to invert the Karl Marx proposition that when he said that the economic structure determines the superstructure or the politics, the ideas in the society or the culture and other aspects of the society. On the other hand, the critical theories, they argue that besides the economic factor, the cultural factors, the ideas, they are also equally important factors in determining how the exploitative structures will be maintained, or in other words, they are also playing an important role in maintaining the exploitative structures. We will see in the subsequent slides that how various post-Marxist thinkers have underlined the importance of superstructures in analyzing the reasons why the revolution it actually is not taking place in spite of so much of grave inequalities in the society. Now, some of the other very important thinkers who were a great source of inspiration to the critical theorist were the Hungarian thinker George Lucas and Italian thinker, very important thinker, Antonio Gramsci. They both developed theories that explored the cultural and ideological aspects of power and domination, because these thinkers, since they have understood forms of exploitation and domination from the cultural perspective, from the perspective of how ideas can help in maintaining system of exploitation, how hegemony can be maintained by a certain system of thoughts, how those thoughts get translated into behavioral practices. Such ideas and such theories have been dwelled upon in detail by these two thinkers, and these thinkers have motivated, these thinkers have inspired the critical theorist, which actually later on came to be known as the Frankfurt School. Now, for example, Antonio Gramsci, he popularized the term hegemony in his very important work Prison Notebooks. In his theory, he has explained how hegemony is exercised not simply by the economic structure or the economic relations of production, but also in terms of various structures in the society, various political structure, educational structure, political parties, then the role of mass media, how these agencies and institutions also play an important role in maintaining the structures of hegemony. Without challenging these structures of hegemony at the level of ideas, at the level of thoughts, we cannot simply by making an economic explanation, we cannot expect the revolution to take place. Similarly, another very important thinker associated with the Frankfurt School was Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm popularized the notion of alienation in his work Escape from Freedom. Escape from Freedom is a very monumental work of Erich Fromm. In this, he has mentioned the meaning of alienation in much detail. He has explained how in the modern capitalist society different forms of alienation are taking place. He has explained in a very beautiful manner how man is getting alienated from his own real self. Then he has explained how man is getting alienated from his products, from his profession, from the work he is doing, how he is getting alienated from his other members of the society. Then how a manager, even the capitalist, is getting alienated from his property, from his capital. And most importantly, he has also explained that how we are getting alienated from the type of food that we are eating, how we are getting alienated from the types of products that which we are purchasing, and the list is much more larger. So Marx has analyzed alienation only from certain perspective, but Erich Fromm has broadened that perspective and included many different forms of alienation which our society is facing in the present times. Then I would like to mention a very important method or a mode of thinking which is known as the negative dialectics. Now this negative dialectic has been used by a very important critical theorist whose name is Theodor Adorno, and he has used this a method, or he has developed this mode of thinking in understanding the structures of operation in his work which is titled Negative Dialectics. Now I will not explain in detail the meaning of negative dialectic because it is a complex concept. I will explain this method and the meaning of this word when I will discuss in my week 2 lecture when I will be talking about Theodor Adorno and his work. Now what are the features of critical theory? Now till now we have discussed the various sources of critical theory. Now we will discuss some of the features of critical theory, because now we are very much aware that what we mean by critical theory and what is the understanding of critical traditions. We know the basic meaning and the basic objective and premise of critical theory and traditions, but there are many other important theories and specific aspects which are associated only with the critical theory or critical tradition. Now I will explain one by one. The first important feature is that the critical theory believes in combining philosophy with social sciences. It also talks about combining explanation and understanding, and third, it talks about combining structure with agency. Now when we say combining philosophy with social sciences, it means that we have to combine the study of social science or our society not only with the values, norms and ethics of philosophy, so that we can actually build a better human society where human beings can live peacefully, enjoying full freedom, have all the potentialities to develop their personality. Now what we mean by combining explanation and understanding, because critical theorists were very much conscious of the fact that if we want to bring about revolution in the society, we have to first raise the consciousness of the people. Karl Marx has also said the same thing. He has said the workers they are actually needed to be educated about the type of exploitation they are facing in the society, and their consciousness has to be raised so that they can understand that they have the potential to bring about revolution. So raising consciousness has been a very important aspect of critical theory or critical traditions. Even when you study feminism, in feminism consciousness raising of women is one of the very important aspect of making a woman educated about her present conditions and the ways in which she can raise voices against the injustices and suffering. So explanation is important because explanations are given by almost all the theories, and there are many other theories which provides the explanation, but what is more important is that we must understand them. Until and unless the people understand them, they internalize, they become conscious of the miseries, they cannot raise voice against them. So that is the meaning of actually combining explanation and understanding. And the third important feature is combining structure and agency. Now I would like to explain in brief the meaning of structure and agency. First of all, I would like to say that there is an ongoing debate in political theory between structure and agency. Now there is a debate which says that, now some of the political philosophers they say that no, the structure is more important, and other philosophers they say that no, the agency is more important. Now what is the meaning of agency? Agency is the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make their own choices. It is basically based on the understanding that human beings have the potential to take their own decisions. They have the potential to exercise their choices. Whereas the notion of structure believes that it is the structure of society, it is a socialization process which affects the way in which the individual thinks and takes his own decisions. So, we have to decide that which of them is more important. Either it is the impact of the social forces or it is our own will. Now, if we see our own life or if we see the society around us, there is no denying the fact that individuals and their decisions are influenced by the processes of socialization. But at the same time, if we just submit ourselves to the processes of socialization, then we cannot assert ourselves. Then we will be slave to the conditions of society. And we know that human beings, they have the consciousness, they have the potentialities to make their choices, to make their life better based on their own reasoning and own rationality. The structure and agency, whether the process of socialization is more important for making a decision or whether it is the individual's own autonomy, individual's own will which helps in making a decision. And there is no doubt that all the critical theories, they believe in the potentiality of the human being or the agency of the human beings to take their own decisions. Now, the next important feature of critical theory is that it combines practice with morality rather than merely instrumental. So, objective of critical theory is not merely to act as an instrument to bring about some change, but it is also to combine that practice or to combine that process with morality and ethics. Because when it is challenging or criticizing the existing dominating structure, its final objective is to bring about human freedom, free from all forms of domination. And the next important feature of critical theory is that it considers theory historical, subjective and part of society. Now, every word is having a very deeper meaning. It rejects theory that are abstract, ahistorical, asubjective and asocial. Now, what we mean by historical theory? Historical theory means that every theory has emerged from certain historical conditions and background. If we have to understand the evolution, nature and features of any theory, we have to study the social and the historical background in which it has arose. As I have just mentioned, that even the critical tradition or the liberal tradition or feminism, they all have arose in response to certain conditions in the society. So, no theory can be ahistorical. And the next is every theory is subjective, because when we say that a theory is subjective, that means that it is also taking into account the experiences of the individual. Objective means we are actually acting in a neutral manner. We are understanding things in an abstract manner without getting influenced by any social factors or any social influences. But we know that most of the time all forms of domination and oppressive practices have a subjective element in it. For example, I would like to explain this with the help of an example. It is believed that a woman who has experienced the domestic violence can better explain the problem of domestic violence than other women or men who have not experienced any form of domestic violence in their lives. So, the subjective experiences should also form part of theory building rather than merely objectivity, and of course, it should be part of society. Any theory which is having no connection with society, which is having no empirical relevance, is not able to provide answers to the evolving problems and challenges of the society, that theory will carry no relevance. It will become outdated, it will become irrelevant in the days to come. So, therefore, any theory has to be historical, subjective and part of society. Then it is a highly an enterprise which is continuously going through the process of reflection, or you can say that it not only questions what and why of anything, it also asks what is at stake when asking such questions. So, these are some of the very important features which has to be taken into account when we are talking about critical theory. As we have already explained that the basic premise of critical theory was the criticism of liberal values and principles. How in the name of abstract notion of individualism and rights, so much of exploitation, repression and the rise of totalitarianism, alienation occurred between World War I and World War II. So, they have made a very important criticism of liberal values and principles. Now, a very important premise of critical theory is that it is also a general theory of society fueled by desire for liberation, liberation in all forms and liberation in every aspects, whether economic, political, social or cultural forms of domination. Then another very important thing which makes the critical theory very dynamic in nature, when we say that it believes that with changing circumstances, new challenges and problems will arise requiring new ideas and solutions. Hence, the nature of critical methods will change along with subjects of emancipation. So, that makes the critical theory very dynamic and also very relevant in the days to come, because it says that the subjects of emancipation may change and our methods may also change, but our struggle will remain the same, our objective will remain the same, and the objective is human freedom and human emancipation. Now, another very important feature is it talks about the traditional, it has rejected the traditional separation between facts and values. We know that fact value dichotomy has been a very important debate in political theory, and it has been subsequently realized that we cannot make a separation between facts and values, because when we are studying social sciences, we cannot simply make a factual study without taking into consideration the values or the norms on which it is based. So, therefore, the Frankfurt School of political theorists, they have argued for the context or practice or praxis or making a connection between theory and practice. Then the next important feature of critical theory is to awaken the individual from the intellectual consciousness into which he or she has been socialized. Now, in the modern society, the individuals are suffering from intellectual unconsciousness, intellectual slumber. So, therefore, one of the important objective of the critical theorist or theory is to awaken the individual to raise their consciousness. Now, the next important feature of critical theory is that it refuses to identify freedom with any institutional arrangement or fixed system of thought, because it does not believe in any absolutist claim. It does not believe in any perennial philosophy, whether it is freedom, justice or notion of liberty. They do not accept any one claim or one theory. They believe that there can be multiple notions of understanding freedom, of understanding rights, of understanding the various other concepts of political theory. It has also questioned the hidden assumptions and purposes of existing mainstream theories and forms of practices. Now, at this point I have already explained, so I am not going into the details of this. Now, the next important feature of critical theory is that it is interdisciplinary and experimental in nature, because when we are talking about the various reasons or explanations of injustices and exploitation in the society, then we will see that the reasons are not only political, they are also economic, they are also social, cultural and historical. So, that makes the study of critical theory interdisciplinary in nature. It is experimental, because experiment is actually based on the notion of change. Since all the critical traditions, they talk about change, so therefore they believe in making experiments with new ideas, with new practices and with new techniques, and therefore they have considered all the, you can say, the perennial philosophy like positivism and also the phenomenology as propounding absolutist claim. If we see that what we mean by phenomenology, then phenomenology is a set of ontological claims about how individual experience existence. It is basically based on understanding experiences, and positivism talks about understanding society according to norms of natural sciences. Now the critical theorists are not ready to accept the final claims of both these forms of understanding. The aim of critical theory is to construct non-identity, those who are marginalized, those who are at the periphery, those who are unheard. The objective of critical theory is to give voice to those, you can say, those who are silent, those who are marginalized. And therefore, it has questioned the conventional understanding of family, sexuality, race, education, etc. in the process of challenging various forms of domination inherent as well as hidden in them. We will delve more into all these aspects of the features of critical theory in our subsequent lectures. Now, there are a couple of activity questions which I would like to read out. Now, what are the different sources of critical theory? Why critical theory should be interdisciplinary in nature? What is fact value dichotomy? Explain 5 important features of critical theory. Now, at the end of this lecture, I would like you to think about some of the important questions which I have raised in this slide. Now, do you think that the ideas which are prevalent in the present society is a product of rich historical heritage? Second, why we should not have absolutist notion of any concept like freedom or justice? Third, do you think that free and critical thinking is essential for democracy? So, with this point, I would like to end my lecture and I wish you good luck. Thank you very much.